Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Navy League's April Special Topic Breakfast. I'm Luke Lorenz, Director of Government Affairs at the Navy League, and today's moderator. I'd like to introduce to you Navy League National Executive Director Mike Stevens, retired 13th Master Chief Petty Officer of the Navy, who is with us today to introduce our speaker. Sir, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you, Luke, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you. We're excited to welcome our special guest, Vice Admiral Jeffrey Trussler, Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare and Director of Naval Intelligence. General Dynamics is pleased to sponsor this special topic breakfast. These events provide meaningful opportunities for industry and thought leaders to hear from and interface with senior defense leadership. The Navy League is honored and privileged to organize and host this most important event. Now to our special guest. Vice Admiral Jeff Trussler is a native of Oklahoma and a member of the Cherokee Nation. After attending college, he was commissioned at the Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island in 1985. He also received a master's degree from the University of Oklahoma in 1992. A career submariner, he commanded the ballistic missile submarine USS Maryland and was the first commander of Task Force 69 for the US 6th Fleet in Naples. He has also served in a variety of shore and staff assignments, including with US Pacific Fleet, the Navy Personnel Command, the Joint Staff, and the Navy Staff. His flag assignments include serving as the first commander, Underseas Warfare Development Center, and as director, Future Plans on the Navy staff. He assumed duties as the Deputy Chief of Naval Operations for Information Warfare and the 68th Director of Naval Intelligence in June of 2020. Admiral Trussler, we look forward to your remarks this morning, and thank you for joining us. Over to you, sir.
Great. Thank you, Mick Stevens. I really appreciate the invitation to come participate today. And, because my office is so far down the hall on the E-ring, I get to walk by the Mick Pond's office every day and pass your picture, every morning. And I said, yeah, I'm going to stop and look at it and today. But thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for having me here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts, but most importantly, really rather answer your questions out there to the best I can. I always tell all audiences, I know that most people are kind of looking for that one piece that isn't out there yet, or some specific info, and then my job is to make sure I don't get ahead of the CNO or stray too much from talking points. And it's always an interesting exchange, and hopefully it can be we can make it productive and worth your time. But I have probably the most interesting job I've ever had in my career. So yeah, I was a submariner, and therefore mainly submarine staffs, operational staffs, nuclear propulsion related jobs earlier in my career. And so when I had the opportunity to come to this position in 2 and 6, I was, CNO, are you sure you got the right guy here? Anyway, we had a nice chat, but this has been the most fascinating position I've ever held. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about what the N2 N6 does. The N2 N6 was created about 11 and a half years ago, under Jack Dorsett. He was the N2 at the time. Admiral Harry Harris had just left as the N6, and they've been working on this concept for a couple of years to combine the N2 N6 to create an information dominance community, all of which they finally pulled the trigger on after a couple of years of study and some thinking about it in 2009, November of 2009. And it pulled together the community's information professionals, oceanographers, cryptologists, and intelligence together in what we call the information warfare community. Now they all still maintain those designators and professional disciplines, but how we attack problems, how we support the commanders in the field, how we make resourcing decisions, we do it largely as an information warfare community. Now, the N2 N6 position, it combined those two positions here in the building as the resource sponsor one of the several resource sponsors and DCNOs that support the CNO. And supporting the CNO is about supporting the fleet we have now and putting together the budgets, the requirements, and the resources to build the fleet of the future. Pretty simple job descriptions, quite frankly. In the N2, N6, I'm the resource sponsor and requirements guy for C4I systems for the Navy and intelligence systems and other information warfare community components. And I'll talk a little bit about those. But we resource the capabilities needed by Fleet Cyber Command and 10th Fleet. Sometimes I think largely unappreciated. They're just like, as a component commander, Fleet Cyber Command, a component commander supporting General Nakasone as the cyber commander for the nation. They are just like any other component commander. Most other component commanders are providing capabilities in the forms of ships, submarines, aircraft, and other capabilities to their combatant commanders for larger, much more visible and traditional operations. The same things happen with the component commanders of all the services. We provide forces and capabilities through that component commander and Vice Admiral Ross Fires at the Fleet Cyber Command for the use of the combatant commander, General Nakasone at Cyber Command. So it's no different. It's just not what everybody has traditionally thought. So we still have some growing, learning, educating to do out there of how we support that combatant commander. And as the 10th Fleet Commander, Admiral Myers operates and maintains our networks for defensive, defensive cyber operations, protecting and defending our networks, and operationally all of our communications nodes and stations, around the world. That is also like any other community. We have a type commander, just like the air forces, the submarine forces, the surface warfare forces. We have an information warfare type commander, Vice Admiral Brian Brown, and he's responsible for manning, training, and equipment. Now, what's a little different is I-4 doesn't have a traditional set of platforms that are deployed. We are deploying capabilities and people to support and operate on those platforms, but their platforms are those shore station communication centers, the capabilities they provide to 10th Fleet and Fleet Cyber Command. So a little different in the classic definition of a type commander, but basically perform the same functions. And just stood up 5-6 years ago. And then just like the other communities and standing up warfighting development centers, the Information Warfare Community stood up the Information Warfare Development Center in 2017, now under Rear Admiral Mike Vernazza. And they are about managing the overall training, the doctrine, the tactics, techniques, and procedures that our teams are going to use with the ever-increasing capabilities that we're providing out to the fleet. And then you go out to what about systems commanders? What about those capabilities? What about the development? There are a lot of program executive offices, program managers out there, and systems commands. But we deal with them all. But in a large part, we deal with the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, NAVWAR, led by Rear Admiral Doug Small, PEO C4I. Kurt Rottenhouse, and PEO Digital, Ruth Longview. So the information warfare community, largely, if you look at it on paper, is just like the other main classic Navy communities. What I'll tell you, though, is it has probably somewhere along the line, there has been a bit of a shift in what needs to happen. And the day-to-day about those ships, aircraft, and submarines, it doesn't matter what they can do unless they can communicate, pass data links, pass sensor data. And that is that's what we're aiming to do with things like Project Overmatch, JADC2. I'll talk a little bit about those today, and happy to answer any of the burning questions you have, because I know there are probably a lot out there. So I would just say, wrapping up that small part, it's just a tremendously rewarding experience to deal with this. And I call it an immature community, not from the capability of the professionals, but it's only been around now about 11 years. we didn't day one start with all those capabilities that we had. It took some forming up in the first couple of years. We didn't have that type commander until 2014, that NIWIDIC, that Warfighting Development Center, until 2017. They're still in the form, storm, norm, and perform. We're still approaching the norm phase in some aspects. We're in the perform phase in many aspects, but still growing and surging. And with the CNO right now, who had the job as Fleet Cyber Commander in 10th Fleet, he recognized that, and it just oozes out in every document, every publication he has. If you've seen the NAV plan, it talks about the IW capabilities a little bit. You cannot read the NAV plan and not recognize that the information warfare capabilities that are needed throughout to actualize that. I always go to it and say, hey, the NAV plan, the piece I've got highlighted here that I hang on my wall and look at, it just says, hey, we must close the kill chain faster than our rivals with a resilient web of persistent sensors, command and control nodes, platforms, and weapons. It doesn't matter about what the platforms we have. It doesn't matter the weapon systems we have. It doesn't matter the sensors we have. We have exquisite capabilities. But unless those can be linked together seamlessly, it doesn't matter. And our job in the C4I world and in information warfare is to link those together seamlessly. Hey, I will talk a little bit before I turn it over to questions about some of those communities and the importance, just the appreciation I've gotten for the professionals we have in the IW community. I'll tell you, for our information professionals, the folks that run, operate our networks, communications stations, day in and day out, I got to tell you, for a lot of years, I was someone who just, yeah, somebody does that. It better be ready when I need it, because I got really important work to do out here on my ship, and if it's not working right, somebody else is, and their head's going to be on a pike because they must not be doing their job, and that is just the wrong way to look at it. It is part of the lubricating oil that goes into making sure your turbine keeps spinning, the shaft keeps cranking, that the weapon system is ready to launch, etc. Those networks are as now and more important than ever now in this day and age of decision advantage, speed of decision, information advantage, as I call it. And then the information professionals also just flat out run the day-to-day operations of the networks that we run, and the Secretary of the Navy and our Department of the Navy CIO have pressed us and challenged us to get out of the 19th century on our enterprise network system, and we're pressing hard with a very aggressive plan to bring into being some modernized tools, some modernized infrastructure that you would expect to have in after 2 decades in the 21st century, and we've laid out a pretty ambitious plan to get that up to speed, and the Secretary has committed some resources to do that. So we're leaning in very hard on that. The pandemic gave us a kick in the pants for some of the tools available and the types of networks and communications capability that people use to work in a distributed manner. A version I guess we'll call a telework. And we saw some tools, we dabbled in those tools and realized just how far behind maybe we really are in just sort of the enterprise systems, the things that sit here on the desk, our desks in the Pentagon, at the systems commanders, at other sort of the business aspect, and even out touching the fleet commanders and how they communicate with us. So we're gonna move aggressively forward in those enterprise systems. Really gotten a great appreciation for our oceanography community also, and the capabilities they bring. We don't operate as a Navy or as a nation without what they bring. The oceanography community and their commands under Commander Navy Meteorological and Oceanographic Command, and several commands that operate on them, like the United States Naval Observatory, they keep time for our nation. Precise time for our nation, and I've grown in appreciation for what precise time actually means and how it contributes to precise location, and all of the capabilities we use on a day-to-day basis in our personal life, and what we will need should we out in the kinetic space, should we have to go there and just operate in the maritime environment around the world. They maintain time for our nation. We also, and you've seen a lot, from Secretary of Defense, the administration on a focus on climate change. The Navy doesn't monitor, and contribute to the climate change discussion. We monitor the impacts, though. The Navy monitors the Arctic and Antarctic ice cap and icebergs, and even names them in certain regions. We do that for the nation. So when you hear about, when you hear the projections of, maybe not the projections, but the actual, what is the status of the ice cap that we use for military operations and planning and understanding, and that is generally available to the public, that National Ice Center, the commanding officer is a Navy officer. That National Ice Center is a partnership between the Navy, the Coast Guard, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration. Each brings some expertise and capabilities that the other doesn't have, and binds them together. But just two sort of underappreciated capabilities that the oceanography community brings, in addition to that understanding of the environment, whether it's under the sea surface, the atmosphere, or in space. I think a lot of times there's just sometimes a given that acoustic capability or radio frequency, transmissions and capability, no matter what part of the spectrum they're operating in, the environment impacts them and affects them. The understanding of that is huge for us to be able to take advantage, say, in our ability to conduct ISR, to communicate, or if we want to not be detected when we're communicating, or if we want to understand when we may not be targeted because of the environmental effects and take advantage of those. It is just a tremendous science that is just deep and broad, and they bring that to us. Our cryptologists, another tremendous community, defensive and offensive cyber operations. You hear a lot about that. If I just stepped out of the military, potential military impact, of cyber operations, and just go to your daily lives. You cannot now, after 2 decades into the 21st century, you can't ignore it at home. Probably most of us in my age bracket, minus 15 or plus a few years, we grew up and just were fascinated as we approached and traveled through our professional lives with the ability at home to do things simpler and easier, whether it's shopping, whether it's banking, whether it's just getting things done and documenting your family history, a hobby of mine. But with each step, with each capability, with each year, with each speed increase by which we, old folks like me started with that dial-up squeaky modem. And then, at some point they became broadband, modems, and now it's just, the fiber age, everything that exists, just easier and easier to pass, travel, do information, make things very convenient. But that's a real vulnerability. So just at home, this, home and businesses, you have to pay real attention. You have to keep up to date. You have to pay attention to making sure those browsers, those applications, your antivirus, your virtual private networks. I mean, that's just living in today. If you're going to use those conveniences and tools, it's just like the safety of any other object or tool, automobile thing you have in your house. You have to pay attention to those and neglect them. Now, think about it in the military aspect with our C4I systems and our networks and our ability to operate ships, aircraft, submarines, weapons systems, sensors. The potential vulnerability for things like that, because they use the RF spectrum, they use internet protocols, they use software. Our cryptologists have their job cut out for them in the offensive and defensive world, understanding how to help us protect ourselves and looking for the opportunities that we may have against our adversaries. And then lastly, the intelligence community. Part of the N2, N6 job is as the director of naval intelligence, which comes with some special authorities and some additional funding through the National Intelligence Program. And I've never appreciated more this community of professionals and the larger intelligence community that we have as a nation than I do now, and the access to them that I have every day, and a little bit better understanding of how we're going to have to compete in the 21st century. I've been in long enough now, 35 years plus, to see us go from the Cold War to what we've lived through 9/11 and some follow-on operations there, and then to us in the last decade, coming to the realization of a great power, adversaries and the competition space we are now in with them. And so there's a lot of work to do. It is never static, and we always have to move forward. I think I'll stop there after just kind of the brief introduction of the space I get to play in. Lots of interesting things I could continue to talk about with Overmatch, JADC2, and so forth. But I suspect you've heard enough about that over the last year or so, and so it'd be probably better to answer specific questions you have on some of that. So Luke, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you so much, sir, and thank you for spending your time with us today and sharing your expertise. As you mentioned, we will now go into the question and answer portion. We already have some coming in from our audience. Our first question, sir, what is the Navy doing to cope with information overload and the need for speed in commanders' decision-making?
Oh, super question. Super question. That is one of the problems in the information age. We have more information than we ever had to deal with. Let me talk about it in two aspects. Just pure raw data that we get, and then actual decision tools that we need to have. When we just talk about raw data, I mentioned the oceanography community. And so, they have sensors, around the world that help us understand and monitor the environmental effects and opportunities we may have, help us with vulnerabilities we may have just because of the, the undersea and the atmosphere. Those sensors, and in fact, they do that a lot with remote unmanned systems. They've been operating those for 2 decades with an operations center down at Stennis. They produce loads of data. So the days are over of just individuals and analysts monitoring. And so we pull in, the gigabytes, the terabytes worth of data. That requires, I think it's the largest DoD supercomputer we have down at Stennis Space Center, where Naval Oceanographic Command operates, that helps run those forecasting models, pulls that data in. I'll tell you, over at the Office of Naval Intelligence, I like to call them the National Acoustic Intelligence Agency. We still have a strong advantage in the undersea domain, and a lot of it is because of our understanding of the acoustic environment. And that acoustic environment, now that we have better sensors, better processing, produces loads of data. Again, no more can we just hire more analysts and sit in front of screens and have them analyze. Stockpiles of data. So what does that lead us towards? That leads us towards AI and ML. We have to develop tools that help us process and sort that data for the information we need, and then to help us learn automatically about the information we didn't know we need, but that's been there all along. We've got evidence of both. In those examples I've gave, we've got evidence and examples of both of those. And I would say that if you look at those two organizations, the Office of Naval Intelligence and down there at CENMOC, that they are both, as far as the DoD is concerned, they're leading edge in their efforts towards that. Now, let's go out there for information advantage for the decision makers real time. It is no longer acceptable that as we bring in all these systems and we start making them communicate with each other, sensor data, that we're going to be linked together as we pursue Project Overmatch and JADC2, that the commander is now going to have more and more information, and he's going to have more and more options based on, especially as we execute distributed maritime operations, spread the field a little bit. That means the commander is going to need better decision-making tools and what we call decision aids, and so that that they're already going to process, for example, types of targets, and it will already understand the available weapon systems on multiple platforms, help us choose the best weapon system. Maybe not the most reliable, longest range, highest impact, but what's the best one there that will take into account, this is this type of target, you have a probability here, this one's good enough, save your best weapon for something you may not know you need it against yet. Those types of decision tools, the bringing together of the sensor data from the multiple distributed sensors we may have, fusing that data into the best solutions and making sure those links, those target data get out to the targets, the weapons. Maybe those weapons need to be changed in flight. Those are the kinds of decision tools we're going to need to help manage that. That largely leads into what we're calling right now Project Overmatch.
Roger that, sir. And those decision tools will truly be transformative, as you were just mentioning. Our next question comes from Jordan Woolman with Inside Defense, who asks, when can we expect the release of the JADC2 strategy? I'll ask this, I'm sorry, that was the question. When can we expect the release of that report, sir?
Great, that's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but let me comment on it anyway. Unclear if the intent is to release that strategy, if Dennis Kroll, the J3, who's leading that effort for the DoD at the Joint Staff, is the J6. If the intent is to release, I'm not sure, but I'll tell you we're pretty close on that strategy. So, the terminology JADC2 has been out there for about 18 months. Originally, in 2019, put a stamp on, hey, we need to combine services to support the Joint Force and the combatant commanders. We need to link together and weave our sensors, weapons, data links, communications seamlessly, not just inside the services. The services have already been working that pretty hard, but we got to make sure the services aren't off inventing and delivering stovepipes that won't eventually link up common air systems, air-to-air weapons, surface-to-air, and so forth. So the JADC2, a few early morphs and, hey, what do we need to get to? Some common attributes developed, some common approaches. So when we said JADC2, it wasn't right out the gate of, this is what we're going to do. It was, this is the problem we need to solve. So over the last 18 months, some iterations have come out. And as General Kroll took over back in, October, November timeframe, with a fresh look of it, first thing he did was say, hey, we need a strategy. So we need a strategy that the services, as they develop capabilities, can point to. And he's been working that with his cross-functional team and with the services for a couple of months now. We're all in the review process of that right now, and I think it is very close to actually being approved. And again, it's not going to, if released, it's probably not going to. It may actually raise more questions than it answers, because people are wanting to know what is the technical detail, what is the thing that is going to be delivered. It's not going to talk about that. It's going to talk about the strategy of how the services are going to need to approach this, how we're going to need to collaborate. It's going to give some left and right boundaries so that we don't invent something that doesn't work with everything else. I know I probably didn't answer the question of when released, but the approval of is imminent as far as I'm concerned. Over.
Thank you, sir. I think that gives us some good background. Our next question comes from Jeffrey Yancho, who asks, how do you see cross-platform distributed maritime operations requirements getting procured when the Navy purchases by program of record? Are requirements getting decomposed to the program of record level?
Super question. Okay, there's my fastball down the middle for Project Overmatch. Thank you. I knew one would get me there. You have just described the problem that the CNO said, go fix. Okay, so there is some great advantage in being a very large Navy and having a lot of capability. And we've organized ourselves over the years in a very platform-centric manner, in a weapons sort of centric manner, and with a set of requirements from a resource sponsor to a program manager through a PEO, so you know how that works. We haven't given the regard we've needed to the interoperability of those types of efforts. And as we approached, the last decade, and starting to recognize the ability to transfer information, the ability to process information from sensors, the speed with which we can now communicate and pass data, that is going to be the competition space. What we have to do to move that data and provide decision advantage that may only last for minutes or seconds. It's about that speed of decision. Therefore, we have to link our systems, sensors, weapons, platforms together like we never have. Now, if we were to sit down right now and say we are going to design a 300 ship Navy or a 350 ship Navy, whatever the number is, and we need some capabilities, and therefore we need to be interoperable so we can pass data, we'd start in the up in this corner here, okay, what it's all going to look like. And we would design from ground zero an extraordinarily effective system, I think, taking into account modern technology and modern capabilities, probably modular efforts, a lot of software defined things. We would start there and we would build around that. Our problem is that we have a 300 ship Navy right now that has capabilities, some legacy capabilities, some very good, some legacy. So we can't just stop and ignore the 300 ship Navy and a couple of thousand aircraft that we have right now and just say we're going to scrap all that and we're going to start working on this. We want to get there, but there are things we can do right now with the platforms we have, with a little focus, and this is what Doug Small is doing in Project Overmatch. With the capabilities we have right now, what are things we can do to have a prompt jump effect, and in the next couple of years, dramatically increase our interoperability and our capabilities that we currently have. Those are intermediate steps that we're working right now. That North Star is still out here. We're still working to define it. But in a solid couple of year, 3 to 5 year plan, there are things we can do to take the systems we have with some very simple tweaks. When I say simple, I mean, that's a relative term. But we can make ourselves vastly more effective in how we communicate and interoperability of all our systems together. Now, you go to the real question, which was, are requirements officers still going to be providing individual requirements? How are you going to manage all that? Well, that's what Doug Small has been tasked to do in Project Overmatch. Now, he was tasked out there to bring that together. He's been given the power to reach cross programs and PEOs to help put together those first increments that I described to rapidly move us ahead in the next couple of years. And he's got a good plan to do that. But we still have this Pentagon structure that's defined in resource sponsors. You've had several of them speak to you, the air platforms, the sub platforms, the surface platforms, the expeditionary platforms. You've still got, the Marine Corps in there. We still have, the larger joint force. That's where we're getting organized here in the Pentagon. And that's, so a couple of things are happening here to better support Doug Small and not create problems for him to solve. And so I really led, quite frankly, by Jim Kilby, the N9. You ought to have him chat with you sometime. When I stepped aboard, he reached far across the aisle. We live next door to each other here on the E-ring in the Pentagon. He reached far across the aisle. He says, he goes, there has not been a resistance to good cooperation between our teams, the platform developers and the C4I teams. He goes, there's not been a resistance or even a reluctance. He goes, but it hadn't happened like it should. So he stepped, my first day on board, he walked down the hall and said, we got to do this better or we're not going to get the force we want right. And so him and I have been arm in arm, and this took his leadership, because among the equals, he is the leader among equals here, because he's the big platform guy, warfare integration. And he has reached far across to bring us into the fold to make sure that we are as aligned as possible. In fact, when the Digital Warfare Office, who's charged with hammering out and closing the requirements gaps in the types of things we're doing, Kelly McCool reaching across those resource and requirements sponsors here in N9, N26, and a couple of other places. That started in the N2 and 6. Previous CNO moved it over to the N9. And again, it really wasn't about where it's hit. It's about the interoperability. So right now, that digital warfare office, we've signed an MOA. She works for both of us. Her picture's on both of our, classic boards in there. So we're taking these chiseled steps to eliminate those barriers and boundaries. We've created stovepipes in the Pentagon. The PEO program manager structure responds to and has developed stovepipes to respond to those. Doug Small on the acquisition end of that as a DRPM, a direct reporting program manager. He's been given that authority. And then we back here in the Pentagon, we're taking a machete and a hatchet to that right now. I don't know if the effects are yet visible in the request for proposals that are coming out yet, but that's what we're chipping away at right now. And again, day one, when the CNO signed out that letter before the end of the year, it wasn't with here's the plan, it was we need to have the plan. And Doug has responded smartly with some efforts that can get us rapidly ahead in the next couple of years while we figure out what we want that North Star to actually be. And there's a lot of work that we have to do in-house here at the Pentagon to not create those situations that he's solving right now, and that we are more thoughtful about how we provide requirements out there that are not just about solving a particular problem, that make them interoperable and interchangeable throughout the fleet.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'd say you knocked that fastball out of the park. We tried to trip you up a little bit, but no such luck just yet. Sir, our next question comes from Mallory Shelbourne of USNI News, who asks, Vice Admiral Kilby said the Navy planned to field a battle management aid on USS Carl Vinson in 2020 in a first step toward developing the naval operational architecture. Can you provide an update on this? Has the Navy fielded the BMA? What is the service learning from this, and how is it helping set up a tactical data network? Great question.
Yes. Have we fielded? Yes. There's still some installation integration ongoing, but that is on track. If you hear Admiral Kilby tell the story, and I'll just steal his thunder. He's as a strike group commander, as a destroyer, and Desron cruiser commander. What he's brought up in, he is out there in that space. He's been out in that space for a long time, and very frustrated with the ability of the assets he had as a strike group commander to link them together, and the air gapping and number crunching that were required of people to link together some of the greatest sensors and capabilities in the world. How can that be in the 21st century? So when he came back to be the 9I and then moved up to the 9 as the warfare integrator, he has had a passion for solving this problem. So he was back at the beginning of NIFCA in an earlier Pentagon role. And just, wait a minute, we need to link a couple of capabilities together, Navy integrated fire counter-air. So, why in the 21st century we're here? So he was part of that team that moved NIFCA forward. That was a step beyond where we started with cooperative engagement capabilities, CEC, to NIFCA. Now as we were considering the naval operational architecture, the tactical grid, really what Overmatch is all about, bringing those to fruition. Those are the terms we were using, the definitions and sort of goals we were setting here in the Pentagon. Step one was, hey, there's right now things we can do very simply. If we just direct and ask the people to do it, produce some battle management aids that make a couple of these things work better together right now. So that's what he was talking about when he was talking about fielding a capability on Carl Vinson in 2020. What Doug Small is going to talk about, he's hoping to deliver along the 23 timeframe, and then to more scale in the 25 timeframe for our strike groups. And right now is a bit focused on our strike groups, but beyond from what we can do now to what we're going to be able to do then with the equipment we have now, with some very small tweaks and some additions, is going to be tremendous. So we're going to take some significant measurable steps in the next 5 years that make us more interoperable. When you hear us talk about the question kind of talked about the Navy tactical grid and the operational architecture. Operational architecture consisting of our infrastructure, that tactical grid, those battle management aids, and how we manage data. You'll see that approach overall largely for Overmatch, because it's about actualizing the Navy operational architecture. You'll see those terms and structure very similar in JADC2, just like you'll see it in the Advanced Battle Management System, just for the Air Force, just like you will see for the Army with Project Convergence. We all recognize and may label it just a bit differently the components that go into interoperability and the things that must be managed. So we're moving out on that right now. Many small lines of effort in progress, now lined up and pointed the right direction. As I've said before, as the CNO kind of scanned the scope of what we were doing, what we were trying to tackle individually, that's when he grabbed us all by the back of the neck. And in general, we were kind of marching around the track in the same direction, but we certainly weren't in step. We're very rapidly getting in step and cadence to march forward. And it kind of goes to the last couple of questions, quite frankly, of we're chipping away here in the Pentagon to provide greater visibility, so there aren't some not well thought out requirements that may go out and solve a problem and just not fit into the rest of the scheme. We're defining the schemes. Doug Small's helping us do that everything we build from now on must fit in. We can't build one-offs anymore. We can't take or accept proprietary solutions anymore. Everything must be interoperable. The government, we're gonna demand we own the architecture and the data as we move forward on all that. Over.
Thank you for that, sir. Our next question comes from Todd Wiseman, who asks, what are the major capabilities missing in the Navy enterprise that Project Overmatch will address?
Seamless interoperability. So everything I just kind of, just talked about. When you talk about where sensors, let's just talk sensor data. The ability for us to use our platforms, the aircraft, manned or unmanned that we launch from our platforms, other devices that might be out there in the atmosphere, whether we put them there or not, the space architecture, those shipboard mounted sensors, whether they're meant for above the air water interface or below the air water interface. The ability for that data to be taken in and seamlessly managed. So when you hear data architectures or data management, there are a lot of ways that sensor data can be captured and stored. Without a thoughtful process, we could produce pods of data that are incompatible with each other, or are not comparable to each other, or not comparable or integrated without putting some black box calculator in the middle to do some conversion. So that's when we talk about the goals of Overmatch and the Navy operational architecture. That's what we talk about when we talk about getting the infrastructure, the data structures right. Okay, so we have a lot of data structures right now. What can we do? We may need a few black boxes in the interim, but developing some of that policy and data architecture that we need, so everything we develop in the future is going to match to that. Yes, those things we have now, we make decisions on. Do we build black boxes, or do we toss this over to the side and replace? Those are the tough decisions. So that's about data. If you talk about, say, the tactical grid, the network of networks with which we communicate, past sensor data, past tactical data links, largely hardware defined right now. And that's very frustrating. It's very frustrating. As a Navy and as a DoD, we can have invented so many what I'll call radios, hardware solutions that aren't interoperable, that require black boxes and capabilities to convert. So, but this is now, as I keep saying, 2 decades plus into the 21st century, we don't have to have hardware solutions. We have to have hardware that can have upgradable, modifiable, software-defined solutions. That's what we're working for. And when we talk about software-defined solutions, that right there in a DevSecOps environment, We can rapidly upgrade and modify those. We can rapidly test them in an environment for all the systems and versions of systems we have. We can test for their cyber vulnerabilities, and then we can rapidly deploy them, vice the hardware clunky change in, change out that we deal with right now. Those are the types of problems being solved, software-defined solution. And then the flat out other part of the NOAA, the infrastructure. We still are going to have infrastructure, land-based, space-based, platform-based infrastructure that'll actuates. There's still going to be radios involved. There's still going to be the transmission through the RF spectrum in some form, or over some fiber optic devices. That infrastructure has got to be right. So we've been living and working on infrastructure for a long time. We have some places where we need to make sure we provide some redundancy and provide some upgraded capabilities. We're definitely working through that. And then again, as we mentioned, that fourth pillar of the NOAA, the battle management aids, this is just turning, I hate to say it this way, but that's the simplest part of it. We just need a couple of commanders at sea to say, I need this. If I could only X, we have the talent. The talent is resident already to make these things, make this data come here and granulate, place it out here, and give me some options. So right now, when you heard Admiral Kilby talk about some battle management aids for Carl Vinson, boom, that was the first easy step. What Doug Small is working on for our next 3 to 5 years, multiple battle management aids that really, hey, not hard. This is what we've got a lot of smart engineers ready to do. They just need to understand what we want. We're defining that for them right now to make us more capable, get us that prompt jump in the next 3 to 5 years. Over.
Roger that, sir. Thank you. Our next question comes from Kevin Brenton, who asks, what is your involvement with nuclear command, control, and communications and coordination with Vice Admiral Wolf and the Navy's Strategic Systems Program?
Wow, Kevin Brenton, hello. Old office mate, shipmate out there. Hey, great question. The details of nuclear command and control aren't going to talk a lot about, but it's hard to imagine that the capabilities that we're pursuing right now to make us better as a Navy supporting our nation, there's a lot of overlap in those capabilities. There's not a complete 100% separate system of systems over here that has the Navy communicate tactically and all the things I've been talking about, and then a completely separate, nothing to see here, group of systems and capability that we want for our reliable and secure communications. Turns out, same types of capabilities, the same types of operators are critical to both. Very involved with the requirements and of Stratcom. And what something I've noticed in this job is in 2 and 6. I've sat in the room or on the VTCs and meetings with the Stratcom commander and with the cyber commander, Admiral Richard and General Nakasone. And the alignment from combatant commander mission and requirements for the capabilities they need, I mean, is about as tight as anything you can get it through their component commanders for the Navy, whether that's, Fleet Force, that's Admiral Grady is the NAV Strat for Admiral Richard. So that's Vice Admiral Ross Myers for Fleet Cyber Command for General Nakasone. From those 2 functional combatant commanders to what they want, they've defined, their missions are pretty well defined and some pretty hard and very tight requirements. But through those component commanders, back to our resource and requirements and in alignment with OSD, that's about as tight a loop as you can get. It's a lot tighter, in my opinion, than when we wrestle with the larger questions of what size of a fleet and what makeup of a fleet we need to support the various geographic combatant commanders around the world. There's a lot of algebra, downright calculus, and what's the best mix, of platforms and capability. But when you get to those 2 requirement, strategic deterrence and the cyber area, very tightly aligned. So that NC3, okay, that nuclear command control communications, lined up with what Johnny Wolf, the Strategic Systems Program, provides in the weapons systems. And then the team here under Vice Admiral Sawyer that ties the policy into that very tightly aligned. In fact, there's probably more of a drumbeat around the status of our work on those systems than any other system we do, that goes all the way up through the component commander with Admiral Grady and the combatant commander with Admiral Richard. Very tightly aligned.
Thank you, sir. We have time for one last question. This question comes from Rick Burgess of Sea Power Magazine, who asks, how is your role as Director of Naval Intelligence affected by the increasing naval power of China and Russia?
Thanks for that question, Mr. Burgess, and thanks for the kind interview last month. How is it affected? Business is good. There's lots of opportunity out there. So let me tell you, the day-to-day is talk about information overload, the daily questions that might come out of what if, just nonstop. So in this again, the 21st century, information is available. We want to develop capabilities that best position us and best give us advantage in the competitive space. We want to develop capabilities that might cause adversaries pause and say, not today. And so what is it? What is that edge we can get on our adversary that they're going to know exists, that just says we may need to use other means, diplomatically or so forth. Our job is to be ready should it go down. We don't want a kinetic event or warfare. We would love to prevent it. Showing that strength, understanding how we might, what their vulnerabilities are, what their capabilities are, how we might counter that, how we might demonstrate that we're ready and we know where you are and what you are. That's the cat and mouse that goes on right now. When I keep talking about that information advantage, we would love for deterrence to work. We would love, as the interim national security guidance says, diplomacy is the first effort. Okay, that is the first effort. The deterrence piece plays a part in that. But then, should those fail, we need to be ready day one. In fact, it would be nice, and I think we're largely headed there, that day one doesn't happen because of what we do day -1. And that is what Navy Intel, in alignment and conjunction with the larger intelligence community, is looking for, those opportunities and vulnerabilities that day -1 or day -2 stops us from going, because of what we're able to do and what we're able to demonstrate before weapons fly. And I think that hey, in the 21st century, before weapons fly, there's a lot that's going to be happening in the domains that are hard to get your arms around and see. And what I say is cyber. And that elbowing, that positioning and maneuvering is going on right now. So I don't want to label it as a phase or any of the catchphrases that are out there, right now, but that's the elbowing that goes on right now for information advantage. A little different than kind of what was going on in the Cold War, a little more human-oriented advantage for information. That's taking place day after day in the cyber world. That's what General Nakasone and team are charged with. That's where the intelligence community and the DoD are tightly intertwined, is working towards that information advantage, so that we're not surprised in what is it we can use potentially against the adversary should we need to, and providing and trying to make that information advantage, the timeline for that stretch as much as possible. We'd like it to be in days. If not, we'd like it to be in hours, but it may only be minutes or seconds. So that's why we've got to develop the systems and the processes that can take advantage of that at the speed the commanders need to make decisions and hold that advantage. Over.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Admiral Trussler, for spending your time with us today and for that fantastic discussion. Thank you to General Dynamics for their support. We will now have a few closing remarks from Navy League National Executive Director Mike Stevens. Sir, I'll hand it back to you.
Thanks, Luke, and Admiral Trussler. Thank you again so much for spending time with us today. And also thanks to General Dynamics for sponsoring this terrific event this morning. We hope you can all join us this Thursday at 2 p.m. for our webinar, The Role of Digital in Accelerating Navy Outcomes, featuring Rear Admiral Paul Spadaro, Navy Chief Digital Transformation Officer, Dr. Patrick O'Connell from Deloitte, CTO, Bill Spriggs, and Deloitte Managing Director and former Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Manpower and Reserve Affairs, and my good friend, I might ask, Mr. Juan Garcia. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.